Gary Lineker is in trouble for alluding to the Holocaust when talking about the migrants, the refugees rocking up on the boats on the south coast. And a lot of people get in trouble when they mention the Holocaust. Maybe it's just best not to mention it at all because it causes a lot of problems. And Andrew Bridgen got in problems when he mentioned it recently. He tried to suggest that the UK government were doing something akin to what the Nazis did, and Gary Lineker's done the same thing. Now, Gary Lineker is a liberal. He's on the left. Andrew Bridgen is on the right, and they both brought up the example for different reasons, and both got shot down for it. Maybe rightly so. Maybe it really cheapens the Holocaust when people make comparisons about it that aren't actually true. And one of the mantras of the people that remember the Holocaust the most is never again, that it should never happen again. But if anything like the Holocaust does happen again, how are we going to criticize it without mentioning the Holocaust? And there are some very strong Israel supporters who do mention a Holocaust that they think that's happening now in China. I've noticed that quite a lot of the strong supporters of the Uyghur Muslim community who are suffering in China, there's one or two vocal, hardcore Zionist Israel supporters who are eager to portray China as the new Hitler or a modern day version of the Nazis, and they can see parallels between what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims in China with what happened to the Jewish people in Europe in the 30s and 40s. So I wonder, would those people have a problem if Great Britain was compared to the Nazis? They obviously don't have a problem comparing China to the Nazis for some reason. So maybe it's about who you accuse of being like the Nazis. Maybe China are a modern version of the Nazis. Maybe what's going on there is comparable. Maybe what's happening in Great Britain, whether it's with whatever Andrew Bridgen was annoyed about or what Gary Lineker is annoyed about, it's just not comparable, and therefore it's in bad taste. But doesn't this kind of oppression always start small? There's the great poem that they first of all came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, and they came for the communists, etc., etc. It always starts small, doesn't it? So if we're ever going to catch the next Holocaust in its tracks, presumably it will be before things get very serious that we would need to act. But I think the fact that Gary Lineker is very much on the left, very much a liberal, very much a nice guy, and comes across as a bit of a virtue signaller. He probably is a very virtuous guy. He never got a yellow card, never mind a red card, in his whole footballing career. So he's a nice guy. He tries to do the right thing. He tries to say the right thing. And some people on the left have been accused of this cancel culture, and people like Gary Lineker would often call for certain people with certain views to be cancelled. Now, the irony of this time, or the loophole, is that it's actually Gary Lineker that is at risk of being cancelled, the liberal lefty Gary Lineker. And some people who strongly agree with him have found themselves having to want him to be cancelled because, well, you just can't say things like that. Equally, people who normally hate Gary Lineker and don't like what he says have found themselves having to permit him to say that, or want to support his right to say that. Otherwise, they will be exposed as hypocrites. Now, I don't know if what Gary Lineker said was right or wrong, but I don't think he should be censored. I support his right to speak out. I support his compassion for refugees. Jeremy Corbyn is big on this issue. Recently, he's been sharing information that would suggest that it's perfectly legal for these individuals to seek asylum in any country that signed up to it, which we are. And it's perfectly legal, any safe country. There are other people that argue the point that you're meant to apply for asylum in the first safe country that you arrive in. And if you're coming from France, which is technically safe, you shouldn't come from France to England or the UK. But I would need to see the law written down in black and white. And even Suella Braverman has mentioned that some of the measures that the UK are considering taking might actually contravene international law. Has the UK arrived at a point where we don't care? If we break international law, we break international law. Something's got to be done about stopping these migrants. But if you want to go by the letter of the law, and this was a point I heard recently on George Galloway's brilliant show on a Sunday evening on Moats, if boats can be turned back or passengers on flights can be turned back to their point of origin, to their airport or the port that they came from, then if you could be certain that the passengers arriving on the small boats arrived from France, then you could technically just deport them back to France. But would that be within the law? I need to find out. And the other point that people seem to bang on about, people that are very against the migrants, the refugees arriving, that many of them are military-aged men. I mean, that language always kind of sticks out when people start talking about the fact that they're military-aged men. But maybe they are. I don't know if that is a factor. But they might still be trying desperately to find a better life for themselves. Let me know what you make of the whole refugee/migrant debacle, and do you support Gary Lineker and his right to say what he thinks in tweets online?